gonna do an island tier list here. So this one's gonna be focused towards the new zone. I expect this to be heavily dominated by grouped muskets, just stacking together and not letting other people having fun. I think the way that we go about this is you have to assume a fight is somewhat fair. So assume that the largest scale fight that you'll have is a 1v3, and anything above that you're gonna lose with any weapon. Except for SNS if you're going to full tank build, in which case you probably won't lose a 1v3, you'll only lose like a 1v5 to a 1v10. But for every other weapon, you will lose above 1v3, so it's like, for those smaller scale fights, which weapons give you the best chance? A lot of this will come down to things that people don't think about, that I think about because I played Albion's Mist a lot, which they're calling the New World thing a Mist. Basically how it works in Albion. Actually, I could probably pull up a streamer that's doing the Mist stuff right now in Albion just to give a high-level overview of like what this looks like, because there's a lot of streamers that play Albion than just do Mists, just so you guys get like an idea of like what I'm thinking about. Eckhart is really, really good, but he's doing a different thing.
We don't.
So for how this works usually in the Mist is a lot of the builds that are really, really good, and of course I get an ad right immediately, so I'm not going to do that. How it works is like a lot of this stuff is based off of movement. So you want the ability to choose when you want to go into an engagement. If you don't have enough movement, you're never going to be able to choose when or when not you want to go into an engagement. So you're just basically a sitting duck. What this means is you have to put Rapier as S tier because it's basically auto mandatory. Like, there's not a discussion about it. You need to have a Rapier because you need to have movement, and there's no other ability or no other thing that gives you a better advantage in terms of movement than Rapier in a game. So Hatchet and like Rapier are very, very, very good. Berserk and Run. Does Berserk still give haste? Berserk still gives haste, right? Yeah, while Berserk is active, your move speeds increase by 20%. So Hatchet, like, these are auto S tier. You can't argue that Rapier and Hatchet aren't S tier just because movement is that important in a spot where you're having constant 1v1 engagements. The entire basis here is that you could choose when you have an engagement. Grace Sword, SSS tier. I don't think it's that good. It's good, but it's not that good. Okay, so with that being established, does anyone disagree that Hatchet and Rapier are S tier as like a auto include? Like, does anyone disagree with that, or are we good with establishing that? And before we get into this, I'll check the YouTube side too. Hoplite Firestaff does boost the damage of smolders. That's a different question. Let me answer that before I forget. This one. Potency of outgoing dots are increased by 15%. Yeah, it increases the damage of smolders. Yeah, that's how that works. The cooldown extension doesn't really matter, but yeah, that's how that works. What type of perk is this, by the way? It's a damage con. Okay. There's a lot of good damage con perks. That's probably not going to be influential in a lot of this stuff. This might sound dumb, but Musket plus Hatchet's the fastest combo in the game with haste traps. No, I played Albion and some other Battle Royale MOBAs like an Eternal Return, and battle right movement is the most important strat. Yeah, I mean, the thing with Albion that balances other weapons that's not present in the New World within the Mist is you have the ability to get in your mount at any point, and your mount has a health that's built into it. So if you get one tapped, or if you get shot by someone, you don't instantly get off your mount in Albion. So you can like run around a bit more on your mount and use that to kind of subsidize for the mobility loss that you have with other weapons. In New World, that's not the case. So you have to run a mobility-based setup for the most part. There's a few exceptions to that. Like if you are a pure tank, you don't need infinite movement. Okay. So Blunderbuss on the island, getting into this now, I think Blunderbuss is going to have a really hard time gap closing on the island. And I think Blunderbuss is completely outclassed by things like, if you think of mobility-based combos, like, you're not going to be able to gap close super well. You are going to be able to knock people off of mounts if you can use mounts on the island. Does anyone know if you could use mounts on the island or not? Because I wasn't part of the NDA build. Someone leak that real quick. If you could use mounts there. Because if you use mounts, this changes a lot. B tier just for net shot. I mean, that's the thing with Blunderbuss is like the entire thing with it is just going to be about net shot because nothing else will matter. But Musket or Blunderbuss is bad for escaping. So like I feel like you can't rate it that high just for net shot. Yes, you can. You can use mounts. Okay, so Blunderbuss is decent then because you can knock people off of mounts really consistently. You could use net shot to basically what Blunderbuss is Blunderbuss on this island is a weapon that is good at catching people that are trying to run away and then running them down. That makes it really, really good anytime that you want to try to like catch a juicy PvEer and finish them off. Like you will not get a better weapon than Blunderbuss at catching people and finishing them off, except for Musket. Musket's the only one that's better than Blunderbuss. I think that makes Blunderbuss like high B, low A. Like it's really it's solid just because of the ability just to net shot people for the most part and knock them off mounts. Miicrow sleeping on Mortal Refreshment, Mortar BB squads. Dude, Mortal Refreshment, he killed the mobs? Yes. Picking an East server to dodge Supple. To be honest, Supple's not really existing after the patch. Like they'll exist, but they're not really existing. Like it's going to be like dumbed down a lot, and that's like larger scale stuff. But I think Blunderbuss is going to be like a very solid choice for the island. I think it's like higher B, lower tier A. I'm going to park it in higher tier B for now so we don't get too many things going in like S, A, B, like those higher ends. But that's kind of my thoughts there. Is it's really good at basically tracking people down. Moving on to Bow here. Does Bow have a way to slow people down? Bow has decent movement. Like for after dodging with full stamina, you gain a 10% haste. Does Bow have a slow though? If Bow doesn't have a slow, I can't put it higher than B tier. Rain of Arrows is a slow, but it's a gross slow. 10% slow at full health plus Rain of Arrows. Where's the full health one? Oh, if you hit a target with 100% health, inflict a 10% slow for 2 seconds. That's not that long of a slow though. Only slows evade shot. I don't think you could use Bow here. No real slow. Yeah, I puts Bow in C tier again. Stagger with evade. Yeah, I mean the problem that you'll run into Bow is people would be able to disengage versus the Bow, and you wouldn't be able to do anything about it. Like Blunderbuss is unironically better than the Bow in this environment because you can hit people with net shot and actually like trigger a fight. And you can also use net shot to get away. Like Bow, it's okay. I don't think it'll be that good though. Ice Gauntlet is completely outclassed by Rapier and Hatchet in this sort of environment. 10% dodge, 10% with a weapon swap to Bow. Yeah, I still don't think Bow has enough to really be good there. Like the argument is you have to run Hatchet or a Rapier, which both bows run Rapier and Hatchet, and those are both good with Bow, but they're used as utility. So now your Bow has to be able to hit people off of a mount, be able to slow people and gap close. And I'd rather have a Blunderbuss, and I'd also rather have a Musket. Like it's okay, it's just not as good. Ice Gauntlet, I don't think is usable in this environment for the most part. The main thing Ice Gauntlet has going for it in this environment is it's the only way you have access to a easy cleanse besides going for Hatchet. Also I think Hatchet's better than Rapier in this environment. So and then other than that, Ice Gauntlet doesn't have a way to create distance really. Ice Pylon is okay. But of course you have to fight around it, which doesn't make it as good. I think Ice Gauntlet's also like a C tier to D tier weapon in this kind of thing. Like I don't think Ice Gauntlet works. But like Ice Gauntlet has a few things that are decent in terms of utilities, but I'd rather have a Rapier and I'd rather have a Hatchet because they allow me to create more distance and actually escape a fight. And Ice Gauntlet won't be able to escape a fight for free, so you're forced to fight. And if you're forced to fight, I don't think it provides quite enough. Ice Pylon's about to get accidentally one shot by aimbot. I mean, Ice Pylon could also pull aggro of PvE mobs too. Like people forget that, and if it pulls aggro of a PvE mob, like it's basically useless. Resilient was deleted, right? Was it replaced with like a mandatory perk? Resilient is effectively a passive. If you run heavier armor sets, you have more effective Resilient now. So yeah, I don't think Ice Pylon works in this environment. Fire Staff does work in this environment, but I don't think it's as good as people will initially think. That being said, I think it's still really good. I think fighting a Fire Staff in New World is basically like fighting a Curse Staff in Albion, but it has a little bit better movement, which means it could punch like above where you would think it would, but it doesn't like, it won't take over everything. I still think it ends up in A tier though. Like Fire Staff, it's very hard to put Fire Staff anything like lower than A tier. It's just a very solid weapon. Fire Staff Abyss allows for a lot of mobility. Yeah, burnout plus charge. Yeah, that's true. Fire Staff Abyss, it would be really good. That is a really good combo. There's no alternatives, no mandatories like what Resilient once was. Yeah, I mean, some people have argued that like health is mandatory to some extent. We thought they changed health. Turns out they only changed health's name. They didn't actually change health in the back end. So I think health is still really good in spots where you're not being consistently healed, but the instant you could take into consideration pots, health starts falling off. I don't think there's really a mandatory perk. The perks to like look out for in terms of this are like shirking heals is like a really, really good perk. The new artifact chest piece is like very, very, very good in this sort of environment. What is it called? Survivor's Coat. So if you get hit while your health is below 50%, gain 50 stamina, lose all debuffs, gain a potion surge that will recharge your next healing potion instantly. So you can just pop another pot. Like that is insane in this environment. Endless Thirst is insane in this environment because it's all pot-based stuff. Like there's some things that you just like kind of can't get around. Like you kind of need Endless Thirst. Survivor's Code is mandatory if you're in medium or heavy armor, in my opinion. Just because the extra health just makes fights unfair. But getting back to this, I think Fire Staff is just, it's always going to be good in this environment. It's not like the problem that Fire Staff will have is it doesn't have a way to easily inflict a slow, but it has enough movement, and if anyone takes a fight with the Fire Staff, they're always going to be taking dot damage. There's not good cleanse effects in the game right now, so I think Fire Staff will just always be good. That's insane. Yeah, that's one of the best and most underrated artifacts that I've seen that's come out, especially for this kind of format with the island. Great Axe is really, really good. You have Charge, you have Crippling Reap, which basically borderline puts it in S tier. It's definitely above Fire Staff because you have access to more movement. The problem with Great Axe will be that most people want to run it in light, and it's going to lose really heavily to Musket. Unless you get the drop on a musket. But if there's two muskets or more, you're gonna be the first target as the Great Axe player, and you're probably just gonna die instantly. I still think it belongs in A tier though, but it's like it's kind of sketchy. Dang, you guys aren't chirping as much. Are people agreeing with my opinions, or do people just not know where stuff stands? Great Sword can block all ranged attacks. Okay, if you're using Great Sword to block ranged attacks, you're not playing Great Sword correctly. In terms of like the right tree with Great Sword is just strictly worse than going SNS and then using a heavy shield and just holding right click, because the blocks are just not consistent with Great Sword. Like Great Sword is really, really good in PvE as a tank because you can min-max that mechanic to block things, but in terms of PvP, it's not usually consistent enough to get enough value with that. I think Greatsword will be okay in this up and coming thing though. I think it's either, it's like between B and A. Because it has access to good movement. It has access to a thing that will cleanse root effects, but Onslaught stance is just a death sentence. Like you just can't go in Onslaught at all unless you're PvEing. Great Axe is Bloodlust 2, good for catching people. It's better than BB. BB net shot versus Greatsword, though. That's the thing. Axe loses to Greatsword, so it's kind of just an offhand. It does, but Great Axe is the best weapon in the game versus ranged, and this is likely going to be a dominated by ranged situation. And like the thing with this is why we talked about the movement stuff earlier, right? Because then you could pick your fights. Like say I'm a Great Axe player and I see a Greatsword, I just don't fight him. Like if you think you're going to lose that fight, just don't fight him. You have the ability to choose which fight you pick because you have more mobility. Greatsword doesn't have a ton of mobility; it has okay mobility. The new artifact actually gives it a lot more mobility though, and will probably have to be used a lot. It's definitely in the same tier as the Blunderbuss. I'm not sure if it's better or not. I don't think Greatsword's better than Firestaff. I can go with this, but I wouldn't put Greatsword in the same tier as Firestaff and Great Axe in this environment. Like this is going to be like a movement heavily thing. So your question is, what do you play with the Great Axe with? I mean, you could play Great Axe with Firestaff, and that's very effective. You could play Great Axe with Hatchet. That's like an old skill combo, and that would be like decently effective. Or you could play Great Axe with Sword and Shield, and that's going to be very effective. Like, you have options there. I'm playing VG Flail with heavy armor, but I feel like this is not a great combo. VG Flail with heavy armor is a really good combo from a utility standpoint in OPR and in war, but other than that, it's not usable. It is only usable if you have access to consistent heals, and if having a large amount of weakens will make a large difference in a fight, and that only applies to larger scale situations. Play it with Greatsword would beat the other Greatsword. Is this a running tier? Because Hatchet BB is an insanely hard to kill combo. Hatchet BB, your issue will be gap closing. But Hatchet BB will be decently strong in this, yes. Lil BB Biss, definitely not, but I wish. No mention of Great Axe Scorpion, so underrated Sag. I mean, yeah, not a common combo, but a decent combo. The issue you run into is if you go into any deck scaling, then your spear is your main source of damage now, and your Great Axe becomes a full utility weapon. And if you run just full strength, then your spear doesn't have great damage. Like it fights itself. That build fights itself. Hammer, I don't think works at all on the island. I'm not gonna lie. The only spot that Hammer works is if you can ambush people in a one-shot combo. And I don't think that's gonna happen very often. So I'm just gonna throw that in D and call it a day. Lifestaff will be the target that everyone picks on. If anyone sees a Lifestaff, they're gonna fight it just because they can. Is Great Axe main build? Yeah. Yeah, usually Great Axe is the main build with strength. With a Great Axe spear. Lifestaff just kind of lets you tank. Yeah, it's like, it's fine. But I don't know if it's like, Lifestaff's like kind of hard to rate because it'll exist, but like, I don't know if you could even do the PvE side on this island with a Lifestaff. Like I don't think you could do Lifestaff Rapier and focus on PvE. Like, I don't think that really quite works. Like, you have okay enough damage, but it's not good damage. Another question, I watched your Flail VG video and I was wondering if Baleful Tether with the slow perk is a good alternative to Orb of Decay. Yeah, Tether is really, really good in small scale, or smaller scale with Flail VG. The question is if Lifestaff will also heal the opponent. It will not heal the opponent. I think Lifestaff is going to be more effective than Bow. It's going to be more effective than Ice Gauntlet. I think it'll be more effective than Blunderbuss. I think it will lose to Greatsword. I think it will lose to Firestaff in general. And Great Axe is pretty close. I think it belongs like mid B. In all reality, we'll probably be crawling with perma hasted muskets teaming that will just 3-2-1 players 24/7. That's most likely what's going to happen. Like, Musket on this island, it's really hard to put it anywhere below A for a general player. And it would be like upper half of A, I think. A lot of the Musket stuff comes down to, is there enough foliage to prevent other people from getting to you? I'd put Lifestaff in low C. I think a bow can never kill a Lifestaff. I think a Blunderbuss can never kill a Lifestaff. I think an Ice Gauntlet can never kill a Lifestaff, and that's why I put Lifestaff in B. I can see why people would want to put it lower because it won't do anything, but like you could still PvE with a life staff. It gets something. It just it doesn't die. Musket is S tier. I I don't know if it's S tier. It's definitely high A. I think it's more effective than Great Axe in general in this environment. It's probably S. Yeah, it's probably S to be honest. Most of the foliage is hidden by NVIDIA Profile Inspector anyways, miicrow. Yeah. Musket's the best third-party weapon. Yep, because you could just trade and don't have to worry about anything. I'm still going to put the offhands above Musket because those are something that like you just need to have no matter what. But Musket definitely is like, I think it's kind of crazy. Is Powder Burn getting changed? Its dot damage is getting reduced, but it's still slow. It has access to haste bills, pairs with Hatchet Rapier. Yeah, Musket is going to be crazy strong. There's morons dying to Lifestaff Flail or Lifestaff Rapier players all the time. Some people don't understand the breaking contact. Yeah, I mean, the thing with Lifestaff is, like, it's a DPS check. Like, if you don't have enough DPS to kill a Lifestaff, you just auto-lose. But the Lifestaff's also never going to be able to chase you down, so it's generally a weapon that just exists. Every single rock I can climb will have a musket on it. I mean, definitely near the entrance, maybe further in, less, but... The spear, for assuming fights will be smaller, is not going to be that good because it's not good at gap closing. With Scorpion, it's a bit better. It doesn't have access to slows except for Cyclone. Cyclone is a good slow. I think that puts it like above Lifestaff but below Greatsword because I think Greatsword has access to better movement and movement matters more. Greatsword also has a way to cleanse stuff. Lifestaff Void Blade Chads rise up. It'd be funny to see that exist. Cyclone has a 2-second cooldown, basically. Yeah, like Spear's best ability is Cyclone. Spear is really good from the PvE side, though. Like, if you just focus on PvE, you definitely can get around with, like, Spear SNS or something like that. Spear has the best tracking in the game. No. I think SNS has best tracking in the game, but Spear's close. Spear is close. SNS is crazy. SNS is also S tier. I will fight that one. SNS is also S tier. Like, the dichotomy is you either go high damage or you just go heavy, have a shield, and you don't take damage. I think Warhammer is better than Ice Gauntlet on the PvE side. Yeah. I'll put Ice Gauntlet in D. I won't fight too hard on that. Like, you shouldn't be using Warhammer or Ice Gauntlet in this environment, though. And you can gear swap on the island. Yeah, that's the other thing, too, that, like, this isn't really taking full consideration of, is you could have multiple builds that you swap between depending on matchups. So, like, you could set up your gear accordingly, or, like, your, what do you call them? Your loadouts accordingly, so that if you like a certain matchup versus a certain player, you swap. Like, say, I'm playing Great Axe Fire Staff, and I see a Musket player I want to kill. I might swap to Great Axe Sword and Shield because that's a better matchup versus Musket. Spear higher. Spear's definitely not higher, and like, Spear is really good if a melee player wants to fight you. If someone's just shooting you from range, Spear is terrible. Spear is decent, though. It makes up for that if it's paired with Sword and Shield, and that's the spot where, like, I think you can argue that Spear could be higher is if you rate it with Sword and Shield, but, like, this isn't combined. This is separate right now. Spear's survivability is better than Great Axe, and it has Scorpion. Spear doesn't have the ability to run away. Great Axe has the ability to run away. Therefore, Great Axe is better on the island. I don't think it's more complicated than that. But Spear pairs with SNS? Yes, but I'd still rather have SNS Great Axe on the island because I have more abilities to run away. You gotta do weapon combos next? The weapon combo tier list, I probably would have to break up to a different day because it will take an hour and a half to 2 hours to go through a weapon combo tier list. Same thing with the artifacts. This will take literally an hour and a half to 2 hours. This one, I am going over like 12 things, and this is taking me like half an hour to 45 minutes per one that we're doing. miicrow, what do you pair Spear to? Checkmate. You said the wrong pair. That's like pear as in the fruit. Why are you using a pear on your Spear? There's like 100 combos. Yeah, we did like before we've done that, and we broke it up into like realistic combos to save time, and it still took like 2 to 3 hours to go through a weapon combo tier list. Love this content, so I don't mind spending 8 hours on it. I know some people don't mind, but there was a Padres Dodgers game, and it's fun for me to watch them because they're both good teams, and I want to watch that within the next hour and a half, at least the end of the game. Oh, only fruit on the island is coconuts. Okay, but spear is definitely higher than greatsword. Not with the artifact greatsword. The artifact greatsword makes greatsword better. The new one, Grace. Because every time you enter an offensive stance, you gain 6 seconds of 20% move haste, and this applies even if you swap weapons. So I can just get the haste, switch weapons, have no downside, and then I can just zoom around the map. Grace enables greatsword to be a little bit better than where you normally would think. And it's a new artifact. Where does it even drop from, by the way? Oh, you could just... I don't know where it drops from. Grace artifact, and then it doesn't link anywhere. Oh, it's from the season pass level 80. So, it's not that hard to get. But you weren't counting secondary hand for spear as a mage in my head, so biased. Even as a main hand, like I'm talking about mobility stuff here. Like that's what it comes down to. Is like the idea here is you want mobility or you want the ability to slow someone else so you have mobility. Firestaff's only an A tier because it's Firestaff. If it wasn't Firestaff, it wouldn't be an A tier. It's just like Firestaff just wins 1v1s, and it's annoying, but it just wins 1v1s because it could just dot affect you and just like do stupid things. What is the haste cap? 50%. How do you make the best out of the offensive speed on it? You would want to basically just use Relentless Rush. I think if you hit someone, you go into Onslaught stance, or no, you get 20% haste when hitting a target with an Onslaught tree ability. So you use Relentless Rush, you hit a mob, you gain 20% haste from this, you gain 20% haste from Grace, and you're zooming around at 40% haste. So it's just a high mobility thing. No, there is a very, very, very big difference between 40% passive haste and a greatsword and Spear's mobility. Spear's mobility is some of the worst in the game. Plus keen speed. Did I miss the tier list? You missed a couple. I'll put them up on YouTube too. I still need to do Void Gauntlet and Flail, which are both in D tier. Is there a reason to put Flail higher? The Weekend I don't think will work really well. Void Gauntlet is okay, but it's not good enough. VG has a lot of slows. Yeah, but you have to be close. That's the problem with VG. Like, you have a slow from Scream, you have a slow from Tether. The Tether is really nice as like an offhand sometimes because... Do I need to think about VG as an offhand too because of Tether? Because this is just like a free 20% in power and a slow, and it's like actually annoying in a 1v1. Like, unironically, the only ability that's... Okay, there's two abilities that are really good at VG in a 1v1 situation, and they're both cheese abilities. Tether's kind of insane, and Essence Rupture's kind of insane. Fuck. I guess I do have to think about that. Put it in C. Only because of the offhand stuff with VG, which I want to think about these more as main hands, but Tether is like such a good thing that it's like hard to ignore it. Life Taker might make it B tier. Oh, that's true. And it pairs really well with Musket. And Orb has a slow too, only if the other target has a dot on it or something else. Hammer can't be D. Crying. How are you going to close distance with Hammer? I think Blunder is still better than Void Gauntlet. Like, even if like I'm thinking about Musket offhands, like if I wanted to go for a Void Gauntlet offhand, I think Pest is still better. Yeah, I think Pest would be better if you had to like go a greedy offhand. This is just weapons, no artifacts though. It's not artifacts, but you have to like take into account artifacts too. Like with the weapons, like they kind of go hand in hand. Like if I were to rate Greatsword without Grace existing, it would be a tier, well, half a tier lower. It would still be in B, but it would be lower. Like you have to take into account some of them to some extent. Like the Fire Staff artifacts makes it a lot better. Sword artifact doesn't really matter. Then Rapier doesn't really matter. Hatchet has a pretty good artifact with Sin that extends the duration of debuffs. Like that's not bad. See, how many people do we have? Do we just send another tier list? Have they said anything about tab lock net yet? No, we're assuming that that's going to exist when it comes out. It's very likely it's going to exist. I've reached out to devs, I've reached out to moderators, and they all don't have a strong opinion on it, which means that they don't want to say that it's going to exist, but it's probably going to exist. You have to think about it from a timeline standpoint too with AGS. If they weren't going to release aimbot, they would need to release aim assist. Otherwise, console players are like probably not going to have a great first experience in general. And I don't think they have aim assist ready. So I think their hand is forced. And that's the assumption I'm making. But it's really ugly. I think Greatsword should go up a tier so it's prettier. It's not the same tier as Fire Staff though, or Axe. It's just not. With Grace, like if you just were to take into account Grace, like maybe. Even then, probably not. Another case for Spear S, you don't need to run away if you could hit the enemy a Scorpion. That is true. I would have a hard time, like, I feel like Greatsword and Spear kind of separate themselves from Lifestaff and Blunderbuss. Like, I could see an argument for moving these two down a tier so that they're, like, more unique, but I still think there's a tier gap between Greatsword, Spear, and Fire Staff Axe. I think Blunderbuss does belong in the same tier just because of net shot. Best weapon combo in the S tier. Musket, Hatchet. Or Sword and Shield, Great Axe. Or with the two I'd put money on. SNS Hatchet's going to be nasty. SNS Hatchet's not bad either. I think Great Axe is just so oppressive in like a 1v1 environment where you're talking about gap close and you're talking about kiteability. Like, Great Axe could actually cover like 20 meters of distance alone with just like charge shenanigans, and then you have like Reap on top of that. It's so good at gap closing. It's like it's better than Sword and Light. The Great Axe is actually better than Sword and Light. If you're going like heavy though, like it's a lot less good. For actual 1v1s with forced fights, I still think SNS Spear is still Biss. Yeah, there's definitely an argument there. Like in terms of a combo thing. I played Abyss the most before I quit in a lot of bruisers. I can't see how and a lot of bruiser. I can't see how Great Axe is bad in this mode. It's good. Yeah. It hasn't changed that much. I mean, the main thing is like the losing grit, but I don't think that matters as much for this mode. So Fire Abyss will perform well on the island. Yeah, Fire Staff Abyss will perform well on this island. Yeah, it will do well. Like, I don't think... Like, if I were to rate, like, the top, like, 3 combos, like, that I could think of right now, I think Musket... And then, honestly, Rapier or Hatchet are equally viable for Musket, but I think Hatchet's slightly better because it has a cleanse. But Rapier does more damage. And you have the artifact. You could do Hatchet or Rapier. Like, you could do Hatchet or you could do Rape. Like, both of them are about the same because they both have good utility artifacts. No one will use Rapier for damage. No, they won't, but the Rapier artifact, if you apply a bleed with a musket, will increase your damage on the musket, which inherently makes it good utility. So this looks so ugly. Like I can't write like words super well with this. I think like after that it's gonna be like SNS, probably spear, and then after that it's gonna be like Great Axe Fire Staff. Like those are like the top three if I had to pick like what would be like really good for this kind of mode. Bro, what are we tier list? Are we listing? We're doing the island, the PvP island right now. Hear me out. Musket, Great Axe, Tempest Fury, Great Sword Utility. That's 3 weapons. That's 3 weapons. What do you want? Oh, Great Axe Utility. I mean, you won't do damage with the Great